Welcome to MogulCast, where we uncover the stories behind the world's greatest business empires. Let's get into today's story.
March 1923, Los Angeles. Walt Disney sits in a cramped apartment, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. His first animation studio, Laugh-O-Gram, has just collapsed. Creditors are hounding him. He's 21 years old, broke, and sleeping on a friend's couch. Just 2 years earlier, he was fired from his first animation job for lacking imagination. Now, he's bankrupt. This is the moment Walt Disney lost everything. And it's the moment his empire began. Walt Disney was born in 1901 in Chicago, but his family moved to a farm in Marceline, Missouri when he was 4. It was here, in the quiet rural town, that he first fell in love with drawing. By age 7, he was selling sketches to neighbors. But his father, Elias, was a strict man who saw art as a waste of time. Walt's childhood was marked by hard labor, delivering newspapers in the freezing cold, often before dawn. He later said, "I think it's important to have a good hard failure when you're young." In 1919, Walt moved to Kansas City, determined to become an artist. He landed a job at the Pesman Rubin Commercial Art Studio, but was fired after just a month. The reason? His boss said he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. Undeterred, Walt teamed up with a colleague, UBI Works, to start their own studio. They called it Laugh-O-Gram. It seemed like a dream come true, until the dream turned into a nightmare. We will come back to one specific decision. It is the key to everything. Laugh-O-Gram was a hit at first. Walt and UB created short animated fairy tales, and local theaters loved them. They even landed a contract to produce a series of cartoons. But the money wasn't coming in fast enough. Walt was living on canned beans and borrowing money from friends. By 1923, the studio was drowning in debt. The final blow came when their distributor went bankrupt, leaving Walt with no way to pay his animators. Laugh-O-Gram collapsed, owing over $15,000, more than $250,000 today. With nothing left, Walt boarded a train to Hollywood with $40 in his pocket and a half-finished cartoon in his suitcase. He was 21, unemployed, and sleeping on his uncle's couch. But he had one last idea. A new series called Alice's Wonderland, blending live action and animation. He sent the pilot to a distributor in New York. The response? A telegram offering a contract. Walt and his brother Roy scraped together enough money to start Disney Brothers Studio. But not everyone was celebrating. Disney Brothers Studio struggled at first. The Alice comedies were modestly successful, but Walt was restless. He wanted to create something entirely new. In 1927, he pitched a character called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit to Universal Pictures. The series was a hit, and Oswald became a sensation. But here is what the media completely got wrong about this. Walt didn't own the rights. Universal did. And when Walt asked for a budget increase, they fired him and took Oswald with them. Walt was devastated. He had lost his character, his team, and nearly his studio. On the train ride back to Hollywood, he sketched a new character, a mouse. He called it Mortimer Mouse, but his wife, Lillian, convinced him to change the name to Mickey. Walt bet everything on this untested character. He poured his last $2,500 into a new short called Steamboat Willie. It was the first synchronized sound cartoon, and it changed everything. Steamboat Willie premiered in November 1928. The audience erupted in applause. Mickey Mouse became an overnight sensation. But Walt wasn't satisfied. He wanted to create something bigger, a full-length animated feature. The industry called it Disney's Folly. Critics said it would bankrupt the studio. Even Roy Disney, his own brother, thought it was a terrible idea. Walt ignored them all. He mortgaged his house, borrowed against his life insurance, and poured over $1.50 million to Is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The pressure was unbearable. Animators worked around the clock. Walt demanded perfection, often scrapping months of work for a single scene. The budget ballooned to nearly $2 million, an unheard-of sum for an animated film. By 1937, Disney was on the brink of collapse. Banks refused to lend more money. Creditors were circling. Walt later said, "We were so close to the edge, I could see the bottom." Then, on December 21, 1937, Snow White premiered. The film was a triumph. Snow White grossed over $8 million in its initial release, more than any film in history at the time. It won an honorary Academy Award, and Disney was suddenly the most powerful name in Hollywood. But the success came at a cost. The studio was deep in debt, and Walt's obsession with perfection had alienated many of his animators. In 1941, they went on strike, demanding better pay and working conditions. Walt saw it as a betrayal. The strike lasted 5 weeks and nearly destroyed the studio. And if you have made it this far, you already understand something most analysts completely missed. Disney's empire wasn't built on success. It was built on failure. Despite the strike, Disney rebounded. During World War II, the studio produced training films for the U.S. military, keeping the company afloat. In 1955, Walt opened Disneyland, a $17 million theme park that critics called Walt's Folly. Walt's Folly. It became the most successful amusement park in history. By the time Walt died in 1966, Disney was a cultural institution. But the company struggled without him. It wasn't until the 1980s, under new leadership, that Disney truly became a global empire. Today, Disney is worth over $200 billion. It owns Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and 20th Century Fox. It operates theme parks, cruise lines, and streaming services. But none of it would exist if Walt Disney hadn't been fired, bankrupt, and forced to start over. Remember that decision we mentioned at the start. Here is what it actually cost. Everything. And it was the best thing that ever happened to him. Walt Disney was fired at 19 for lacking imagination. His first studio collapsed, owing over $15,000. He bet his last $2,500 on a mouse. Snow White nearly bankrupted him. The 1941 strike nearly destroyed the studio. Yet, by 2026, Disney was worth over $200 billion. The lesson? Failure isn't the end. It's the price of admission. Most people think Disney succeeded because of talent. The truth, it was built on resilience. Walt Disney's greatest skill wasn't creativity. It was the ability to turn failure into fuel. Every time he was knocked down, he got back up. And that's the lesson no one talks about. The difference between a dreamer and a mogul isn't talent. It's the refusal to quit. If you want to understand how this pattern repeats across every major business empire, the next video covers a story with disturbing parallels. A founder who was fired, bankrupt, and written off, only to build a company that changed the world. That one is next.
That's the story for today on MogulCast. If you found this valuable, subscribe and hit the bell. A new empire story drops every single weekday. See you tomorrow.